The royal convoy moved through the dawn like a funeral procession. 6 black carriages, 30 guards on horseback, weapons drawn despite the empty road stretching ahead. This was not ceremony. This was desperation wearing the mask of power. Inside the lead carriage, Alpha King Nathaniel Drace sat motionless against velvet cushions that had once cradled his Luna. His coat was immaculate. His posture was rigid. His eyes were hollow. In his arms, wrapped in silk blankets embroidered with the royal crest, his newborn son screamed. Not the healthy, demanding cry of an infant learning its own strength. This was different. This was wrong. The sound was thin, fraying at the edges like a thread about to snap. Each breath the pup took seemed weaker than the last. The cries came in desperate, panicked bursts that made the guards outside flinch and look away. Nathaniel had stopped counting the days, stopped counting the wet nurses who had failed, stopped counting the healers who whispered their uncertainty and left with gold coins and no answers. The pup refused every breast offered, refused the enchanted bottles crafted by the palace's most skilled magic wielders, refused everything except this endless, soul-crushing crying that grew quieter with each passing hour. Quieter meant weaker. Weaker meant dying. The convoy master rode alongside the carriage window. His face was carefully blank, but his scent betrayed his fear. Even through the glass, Nathaniel could smell it. Sharp, acidic, the scent of a man watching his king's heir fade and knowing there would be consequences no amount of loyalty could deflect. Majesty, the pup's breathing. I know, Nathaniel said. His voice was flat, empty of everything except the weight that had settled into his chest the night his Luna's heart stopped beating. The convoy master hesitated. We can turn back. The palace healers have already failed. Nathaniel looked down at his son. The pup's face was red, contorted, mouth open in another cry that barely made sound. We continue. They were searching for a healer rumored to live in the northern territories. An old wolf who supposedly understood bonds that broke before they finished forming. Nathaniel knew it was foolish. Knew they were chasing shadows while his son wasted away in his arms. But doing nothing felt like surrender. And an Alpha King did not surrender. Even when his son was dying, even when his Luna was 3 weeks in the ground, even when the bond that should have anchored his newborn heir had snapped mid-formation, violent and complete, leaving a wound that no magic could see but every instinct could feel. The memory came without permission. It always did. The birthing room. Candles burning low. Healers moving with practiced urgency that was starting to fracture into panic. His Luna, pale and struggling, her hand gripping his with strength that shouldn't have been possible. She had labored for 2 days. Magic sustained her when her body wanted to quit. The healers held her together with spells and prayers and sheer desperate will, long enough for the bond to begin, long enough for the pup to feel her warmth, her heartbeat, her presence wrapping around his new existence like a promise. And then, as the pup took his first breath and released his first cry, Nathaniel felt the bond shatter, not gently, not like a thread breaking, like glass exploding inward. His Luna's hand went slack in his, her eyes fixed on something he couldn't see. The healers shouted orders that meant nothing because death had already entered the room and claimed what it came for. The pup kept crying. That first cry had been strong, healthy, the cry of a child entering the world and demanding to be acknowledged. But within hours, it changed. The wet nurses tried. The pup latched, drank, and then screamed harder, fed and still starving. The crying didn't stop. It transformed. It became something else. Nathaniel had seen battle, had heard warriors scream as they died, had heard prisoners beg for mercy they wouldn't receive. This was worse, because this was his son crying for something that no longer existed. The pup wasn't rejecting nourishment. He was rejecting absence. A healer had tried to explain it once, in careful, academic terms that felt obscene in their clinical detachment. The bond between a pup and its mother began forming in the womb. Heartbeat synchronization, scent imprinting, the sensation of safety built over months of shared existence. When birth happened naturally, the bond shifted. Adjusted. The pup learned a new kind of closeness, still tethered, but differently. But when the bond broke during formation, when the anchor vanished while the pup was still reaching for it, the healer had stopped talking, had looked at the screaming newborn with something close to pity. Instinct didn't understand death. It only understood absence, and it screamed. Inside the carriage, the pup's cries suddenly hitched, stopped. The silence was worse than the screaming. Nathaniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He shifted the bundle in his arms, tilted the pup's face toward the weak dawn light filtering through the curtains. His son's lips were pale. His tiny chest moved, but barely. The breathing was too shallow, too weak. Stop the convoy. The order cracked through the air. Guards shouted. Horses whinnied. The carriages lurched to a halt. Nathaniel didn't wait for the door to be opened. He shoved it wide with his shoulder and stepped onto the dirt road, his son cradled against his chest. The guards formed a perimeter instantly, weapons drawn, eyes scanning the empty landscape of frost-touched fields and skeletal trees, but Nathaniel barely saw them. His son was dying in his arms. Right now, right here, on a desolate road in the middle of nowhere. The heir to the strongest pack in living memory was slipping away. Nathaniel dropped to his knees in the dirt. The Alpha King knelt in the road like a common wolf and held his dying son and felt something inside him crack apart. "Please," he whispered. Not to the guards. Not to the healers who had failed. Not to the Luna who couldn't answer. To anyone. Anything. Please. The pup's breathing rattled. His tiny fist curled against Nathaniel's chest, so small it broke something fundamental in the king's carefully controlled composure. And then Nathaniel smelled her. Milk, grief, fear. His head snapped up. Across the road, partially hidden by the shadow of a twisted oak tree, stood a woman. No, an Omega. She was thin, wearing clothes that had been mended too many times. Her hair was pulled back in a braid that had come loose during sleep. Her feet were bare despite the frost on the ground. She stood frozen, staring at the convoy with the expression of someone who had just stumbled into a nightmare. But that wasn't what made Nathaniel's breath catch. It was her scent. Milk, fresh and ready. Grief, old and deep. And underneath it all, the scent of an Omega whose body had never stopped preparing for a child that was gone. Their eyes met across the road. She knew. Somehow. She knew exactly what his son needed, and from the terror blooming across her face, she also knew exactly what it would cost her to provide it. "Hey, quick question. How are you feeling right now?" "Thank you so much for being here. It really means the world to me. If this story of an Alpha King brought to his knees by a crying child, and the widow Omega who saved them both, is touching your heart, please hit that subscribe button for Ariel Romance Library, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know." Alright, thank you. Now let's get back to what happens when the woman nobody noticed becomes the one the Alpha King chooses to fight for. Lorena had learned long ago that survival meant making yourself small, not weak. Weakness invited exploitation. Small, unremarkable, easy to overlook. She lived on the margins of packlands, in a cottage that had belonged to her grandmother before memory turned to legend. It was far enough from the pack center to avoid daily scrutiny, close enough to technically remain under protection. Not that protection meant much when you had nothing worth protecting. Her mate had died 3 years ago. Border skirmish. A rival pack testing boundaries. He had been a good fighter. Not good enough. The pack had honored him, given her a stipend, treated her with the careful, distant kindness reserved for widows who served as living reminders of what war cost. She had been pregnant when he died. The pup came early. Too early. Small and struggling and never quite strong enough despite everything the healers tried. He lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of watching her son fight for every breath. 6 weeks of her body producing milk that seemed to help but never enough. 6 weeks of hope crumbling into acceptance, and then into the hollow numbness that came after grief burned through everything else. Her body never understood that the pup was gone. Every dawn, milk came. Her breasts ached with fullness, meant for a child who would never cry for her again. She bound herself. Tight wrappings that compressed and hid and hurt just enough to distract from the deeper pain. She learned to move through the packlands like a ghost. Shopping at the market before dawn when few people were awake. Taking work that kept her isolated. Mending clothes, preserving food, tasks that could be done alone. People forgot about her. She preferred it. This morning, she had been foraging near the road. Wild herbs grew near the old oak tree, useful for teas that helped with sleep. She needed sleep, needed the dreamless kind that didn't replay memories on an endless loop. The sound of horses had sent her ducking into the tree's shadow. Royal convoy. She recognized the black carriages, the formation of guards, the way they moved with purpose that suggested urgency. She should have stayed hidden, should have waited for them to pass. But then she heard it. The cry. It hit her body before her ears registered the sound. Her chest clenched violently. Her breath caught. The bindings around her breasts suddenly felt like iron bands crushing her ribs. She knew that cry. Not the specific child. Not the voice, but the meaning behind it. That was grief. Raw, primal, instinctual grief crying out for something that should be there and wasn't. She had heard her own son make that sound in his final days. When his body was failing and some deep, wordless part of him knew his mother's milk wasn't enough and never would be. The convoy stopped. Guards shouted orders. And then she saw him. The Alpha King. She had never seen Nathaniel Drace in person. Few had. He ruled from a distance, all authority and legend. Stories painted him as immovable. Absolute, power contained in human form. But the man kneeling in the dirt road looked shattered. His coat was open. His hair was disheveled. He held a bundle against his chest with the desperate care of someone trying to hold water in cupped hands. The crying came from that bundle. Weak, fraying. The sound of a pup dying. Lorena's body reacted before her mind could stop it. Milk let down violently. She gasped at the sudden, sharp sensation. The bindings grew wet. Her breasts ached with a fierceness that made her vision blur. Her body knew what that pup needed, and it was trying to answer. No. She turned away, pressed her back against the oak tree, tried to control her breathing. This wasn't her child, wasn't her responsibility. Getting involved with royalty, with an alpha king, with whatever tragedy was unfolding in that convoy, that was how small, unremarkable Omegas got destroyed. She had survived by staying invisible. This was the opposite of invisible. The crying hitched, stopped. The silence was worse. Lorena's chest constricted. She knew that silence, knew what it meant when a struggling pup went quiet. She had held her son when he went quiet. Her feet moved without permission. She stepped out of the shadow. Across the road, the Alpha King's head snapped toward her. His eyes were gold, bright and feral, the eyes of a wolf barely contained in human skin. He saw her. More than that, he smelled her. She could see the exact moment recognition hit. The way his nostrils flared. The way his body went rigid. He knew what she was, knew what she could offer. Lorena's hands clenched at her sides. She should run, should disappear back into the trees and let this moment pass into memory. But the pup's breathing was shallow, rattling. Even from across the road, she could hear it failing. The Alpha King's mouth moved. He was speaking, but she couldn't hear the words over the rushing in her ears. And then he did something that made the world tilt sideways. He bowed his head. Not a formal bow, not ceremony. He lowered his head and held his dying son toward her like an offering, like a plea. The most powerful alpha in living memory was begging her. Lorena's hands shook. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the wet bindings beneath her worn dress, feeling her body's insistent response to a child's need. This was forbidden. An Omega nursing an alpha heir was political death. Blood laws existed for reasons. Bonds formed through nursing. Imprinting happened. Lines of power got complicated. She had nothing, was nothing. The kind of Omega who existed in the margins precisely because she posed no threat to anyone. Nursing the alpha heir would make her a target, would paint a mark on her back that no amount of hiding could erase. But the pup was dying. She could hear it, could feel it in the way her body was screaming at her to move, to act, to do what she was made to do. Save the child. Lorena took one step forward, then another. The guards shifted. Hands went to weapons. But the Alpha King raised one hand, and they froze. She crossed the road on shaking legs, stopped 3 feet from where he knelt. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the grief, the desperation that had stripped away every layer of royal composure. "Please," he said. His voice was rough, broken. "Please." Lorena looked down at the bundle in his arms. The pup was tiny, newborn. His face was red, mouth open in a silent cry, chest barely moving. He was beautiful. He was dying. "I can't," she whispered. "The law. I am the law." The words carried weight. Authority. But underneath, she heard something else. Terror. The terror of a father watching his son slip away. Lorena's eyes burned. She thought of her own son, the way he had looked at her in those final moments, the way his tiny hand had curled around her finger. She thought of the milk her body kept producing, the cruel reminder that she had been made for this and failed. Maybe she could save this one. Maybe this time, her body's insistence could mean something other than grief. "If I do this," she said slowly, "everything changes." Nathaniel met her eyes. "Everything already changed the night my Luna died." Truth, raw and bleeding. Lorena's hands unclenched. She knelt in the dirt beside the Alpha King. "Clear a space," Nathaniel ordered. His voice carried across the road. "Turn away, all of you." The guards obeyed instantly. They formed a perimeter, backs turned, creating a barrier of privacy in the middle of nowhere. Lorena's hands shook as she reached for the lacings of her dress. The fabric was old, but her fingers were clumsy with fear and adrenaline and something that felt dangerously close to hope. She unwound the bindings. Her breasts were swollen, milk-heavy. They ached with the fullness of a purpose her body refused to abandon. Nathaniel handed her his son. The weight settled into her arms like memory, like muscle remembering what it had been made to do. The pup was so small, so fragile. His skin was too pale, his breathing too weak. She brought him to her breast. For a moment, nothing happened. The pup's mouth was slack, his eyes closed. He wasn't latching, Wasn't responding. Lorena's heart dropped. She was too late. He was too far gone. Her body's insistence was meaningless against the reality of the pup's mouth moved. Instinct kicked in. He latched. Weakly at first, barely a flutter against her nipple, and then stronger, and then with desperate, hungry purpose. The crying stopped. Completely. The silence was staggering. Lorena felt the milk flow, felt the pup drink, felt her body respond with a fierce rightness that made her eyes burn with tears she had thought were long dried up. He was drinking, swallowing. His tiny hand came up and pressed against her breast with surprising strength. His breathing steadied, deepened. He was eating, actually eating. After weeks of refusal, the alpha heir was finally accepting nourishment, and it was working. Lorena looked up. Nathaniel was staring at his son with an expression she couldn't name. Relief, grief, wonder, terror. All of it tangled together into something too big for one face to hold. He's eating, Nathaniel whispered. Yes. He's not crying. No. Silence stretched between them. Not empty. Full of everything that had just shifted. The pup drank until his suckling slowed. Until his body went heavy with the kind of satisfied exhaustion that only came after real hunger was finally sated. He fell asleep, still latched to her breast. Lorena carefully detached him. His mouth released with a soft sound. A drop of milk clung to his lips. He didn't cry. He slept. Peaceful. Deep. Real sleep. She held him for a moment longer, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, feeling the warmth that meant life instead of fading. And then she felt something else. A pull. Not physical. Deeper than that. Something in her chest that hadn't been there before. A thread. A tether. Connecting her to this child in a way that felt permanent. She looked at Nathaniel. Saw her own realization reflected in his eyes. He imprinted, she said. Her voice was hollow. Didn't he? Nathaniel nodded slowly. Yes. Not a mating bond. Not pack bonds. Something else. Something older and more fundamental. A life tether. The kind that formed when a dying pup found the one thing that could save him, and latched on with every instinct he possessed. Permanent. Biological. Irreversible. Lorena looked down at the sleeping infant in her arms. She had saved him. And in doing so, she had just bound her life to his in a way that no law or distance or will could break. Everything had changed. And there was no going back. The convoy returned to the palace under heavy guard and heavier silence. Nathaniel rode in the carriage with Lorena and his sleeping son. The pup remained peaceful, his tiny chest rising and falling with steady, healthy breaths. Every few minutes, Nathaniel found himself checking, making sure, confirming that the silence was sleep and not something worse. Lorena sat across from him, her dress relaced, her expression carefully blank. She held herself rigid, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the passing landscape outside the window. She hadn't spoken since they started moving. Neither had he. What was there to say? Thank you felt obscene. His son was alive because of her. Words couldn't touch that. I'm sorry felt equally useless. She had made the choice, had known the cost. So they sat in silence while the world outside continued as if nothing fundamental had shifted. But it had. Nathaniel could feel it. The tether. The bond his son had formed with this unknown Omega. It wasn't like the pack bonds he maintained with his wolves. Those were built on ceremony and blood and conscious choice. This was instinct. Pure. Primal. The kind of bond that formed when a drowning pup found solid ground and refused to let go. His son needed her. Not wanted. Needed. Remove her. And the pup would feel that absence the same way he had felt his mother's death. Would cry that same wrong, panicked cry. Would waste away despite every wet nurse and healer in the kingdom. Lorena had become biologically essential to the heir's survival, which made her politically indispensable. And politically catastrophic. The palace loomed ahead. White stone, high towers, beauty designed to intimidate. Nathaniel had always loved this place. His family had ruled from these halls for 6 generations. Every stone carried history, legacy, power. Now it felt like a trap about to close. The convoy passed through the main gates. Guards saluted, servants hurried forward, and then stopped. Because the Alpha King was stepping out of the carriage carrying his son, followed by a thin, poorly dressed Omega no one recognized. Nathaniel could smell the confusion, the curiosity, the beginning of rumors that would spread through the palace like fire through dry grass. Take her to the East Wing, Nathaniel ordered. He kept his voice flat, commanding. The Blue Suite, post guards. No one enters without my direct permission. His beta, Marcus, approached. His eyes flicked to Lorena, then back to Nathaniel. Questions filled his scent, but he was too well trained to ask them in public. Majesty, the council has been waiting. They want to know. Tell the council I will address them when I'm ready. Nathaniel shifted his son's weight. The pup remained asleep, peaceful, and summoned the head healer. Immediately, Marcus bowed. Of course. Nathaniel walked into the palace. Lorena followed 3 steps behind, her head down, her posture screaming discomfort. Servants whispered. Courtiers stared. Every eye in the entrance hall tracked their progress. Let them look. Let them wonder. He would deal with the political fallout later. Right now, his son was sleeping, really sleeping, and that mattered more than court gossip. The blue suite was designed for honored guests. High ceilings, elegant furniture, windows that overlooked the palace gardens. Beautiful, comfortable, isolated. Lorena stepped inside and stopped. She turned slowly, taking in the space with wide eyes. This is too much, she said. Her voice was quiet, strained. It's necessary. Nathaniel crossed to the sitting room. A bassinet had been placed near the window. He had ordered it prepared during the ride. My son will need to be near you. This suite connects to the royal wing. It's secure. Lorena wrapped her arms around herself. I don't belong here. You saved my son. You belong wherever I say you belong. She flinched. Not from fear. From something else. Something that looked like resignation. I'm not a prisoner? You're under protection. That's not an answer. No, it wasn't. Nathaniel laid his son in the bassinet. The pup stirred slightly, made a small sound, then settled back into sleep. Still not crying. The relief was so intense it hurt. You can't leave, Nathaniel said. He kept his voice even. Factual. The imprint has formed. If you go, he'll feel it. The crying will start again. I know. Lorena moved to the window, stared out at the gardens. How long? I don't know. Weeks, months, maybe longer. And then we'll reassess. She laughed. It was a hollow sound. Reassess. That's a polite way of saying, you'll decide what to do with me once your son doesn't need me anymore. Nathaniel said nothing. Because she was right. Lorena turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She had the look of someone who had cried all their tears long ago and had nothing left. I want to be clear about something, Alpha King. I didn't do this for reward. I didn't do it for status. I did it because a child was dying and I could help. That's all. I know. So when your court decides I'm a threat, when they start whispering that I'm trying to manipulate my way into power, when they come for me, her voice cracked slightly, I want you to remember that I never asked for this. Nathaniel crossed the distance between them, stopped just outside her personal space, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to not be threatening. I won't let them come for you. You might not have a choice. I'm the Alpha King. I always have a choice. She met his eyes. Power doesn't stop politics. It just makes the knives sharper. True. Painfully true. Stay here, Nathaniel said. Let me handle the court. Keep my son alive and healthy. That's all I'm asking. For now. For now, he agreed. Because honesty felt important. She deserved that much. A knock at the door interrupted them. The head healer entered. An elderly woman named Iris, who had served the royal family for 40 years. She looked at Lorena, then at the sleeping pup, then at Nathaniel. You found an Omega, she said. Her tone was neutral, but her scent betrayed her shock. I found the solution. Nathaniel gestured to his son. Examine him. Confirm he's healthy. Iris approached the bassinet. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking the pup's breathing, his color, his responsiveness. She was quiet for a long moment. His heartbeat is steady. His breathing is clear. His color is good. She straightened. Looked at Nathaniel with something close to wonder. Whatever you did worked. She worked, Nathaniel corrected. He nodded toward Lorena. She fed him. He imprinted. Iris went very still. An imprint bond? Yes. Majesty, that's irreversible. I know. The healer's eyes moved to Lorena. Assessment. Calculation. How long since you lost your own pup? Lorena's hands clenched. 10 months. And your body is still producing milk? Yes. Iris nodded slowly. Your body never completed its purpose. The bond your son formed with you in the womb never fully resolved through nursing. So your body continued preparing. She paused. In some ways, you were waiting for a child who would actually survive. The words hit like stones. Lorena's face went pale. That's cruel, she whispered. That's biology, Iris said gently. Omega bodies are designed to nurture. When that purpose goes unfulfilled, the body doesn't simply stop. It waits. Nathaniel watched emotions flicker across Lorena's face. Pain, recognition, and underneath it all, something that might have been relief. Her grief had served a purpose. Her body's cruelty had saved a life. It didn't make the loss less, but it meant something. She'll need proper nutrition, Iris said, turning to Nathaniel. Nursing a pup this age requires significant energy. I'll prepare supplements. And she should eat regularly. No skipping meals. Arrange it, Nathaniel ordered. Iris bowed and left. The silence that followed felt different, heavier. I should go, Nathaniel said. Let you rest. If you need anything, I know. Lorena turned back to the window. Ring for servants. Stay in the suite. Don't cause trouble. That's not what I was going to say, but it's what you meant. Perhaps. Nathaniel moved to the door. Stopped. You saved my son. Whatever happens next, I won't forget that. Lorena didn't turn. People forget everything eventually, Alpha King. Especially when it becomes convenient. He wanted to argue, wanted to promise otherwise, but she was right. Politics had a way of eroding everything, including gratitude. So he left without another word, and tried not to think about how the door closing behind him sounded exactly like a cage locking shut. 3 days passed. The pup thrived. It was staggering how quickly color returned to his face, how his cries transformed from that wrong, panicked sound into normal infant demands. Hungry, tired, uncomfortable, the usual complaints that meant health instead of dying. He ate well, slept deeply, and every time he woke, he cried for Lorena. Only Lorena. Nathaniel had tried, had held his son when the pup woke fussy, had attempted to soothe him, had offered everything except the one thing the child actually wanted. The crying would escalate, that wrong sound creeping back into it, panic edging toward the grief scream that had nearly killed him, and then Lorena would appear. The pup would quiet instantly, would turn toward her with single-minded focus, would latch and eat and settle back into contentment, so complete it made Nathaniel's chest ache. His son loved her. No, needed her. The distinction mattered. The court noticed. Of course they noticed. Whispers filled the palace halls. Rumors spread like disease. The Alpha King had brought a strange Omega into the palace. She was feeding the air, spending hours alone with him. The imprint bond was real, confirmed, permanent. The council demanded a meeting. Nathaniel delayed as long as possible, but on the 4th day, he couldn't avoid it anymore. The council chamber was cold, despite the fire burning in the hearth. 12 wolves sat around the obsidian table, alphas from allied packs, advisors who had served his father, wolves with power and opinions and no patience for disruption. Nathaniel took his seat at the head of the table, felt every eye on him, smelled the tension thick enough to choke on. Marcus stood at his right hand, silent, supportive. But even his beta's loyalty couldn't change what was coming. Explain, Council Member Aldrich said. He was old, powerful, direct. The Omega. Who is she? Her name is Lorena. She's a widow from the Northern Territories. And she's nursing the heir. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Pointed. You understand the implications, another council member said. Her name was Vera. Sharp mind, sharper tongue. An Omega nursing the Alpha heir forms bonds, creates obligations, muddles bloodlines. My son was dying, Nathaniel said flatly. She saved him. That's all that matters. That's not all that matters, Aldrich countered. What happens when the heir no longer needs her? What happens when she demands recognition? Compensation? Status? She's demanded nothing. Yet. Nathaniel's hands clenched beneath the table. You're creating problems that don't exist. We're anticipating complications, Vera said. The imprint bond is permanent. You can't simply send her away, but keeping her here creates political vulnerability. Rival packs will see this as weakness. They'll question your judgment, your control. Let them question. Majesty, Marcus started. No, Nathaniel's voice cut through the room. My son is alive. He's healthy. He's thriving. I will not apologize for doing whatever was necessary to achieve that. No one is asking you to apologize, Aldrich said. We're asking you to manage the situation. Define the Omega's role. Set boundaries. Make it clear this is temporary. The imprint bond isn't temporary. Then make her status temporary. Compensate her generously. Give her land, resources. Ensure her loyalty in silence. But keep her separate from the royal family. Nathaniel met the old Alpha's eyes. She's caring for my son. She's already part of the royal family. The room went silent. Vera leaned forward. You can't be serious. You're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating fact. She feeds the heir. He's imprinted on her. Therefore she's essential. Therefore she stays. Under my protection. And when he's weaned? Aldrich pressed. We'll address that when we reach it. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be. The tension in the room sharpened. Several council members exchanged glances. Marcus's hand moved subtly toward his weapon. Nathaniel stood. The movement was casual. The meaning wasn't. This meeting is over. My decision is final. The Omega stays. He walked out before anyone could argue, but he felt their stares burning into his back, and he knew this wasn't finished. Nathaniel found himself outside Lorena's suite that evening. He hadn't intended to come here, had planned to work through correspondence, review border reports, do anything except think about the thin Omega who had somehow become the center of his son's world. But his feet had carried him here anyway. He knocked. Silence, then footsteps. Lorena opened the door. She wore a simple dress the servants had provided. Her hair was down, damp from bathing. She looked tired, but healthier than when he'd first seen her. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No. I wanted to check on my son." She stepped aside, let him enter. The pup was asleep in the bassinet, bundled in soft blankets. His face was peaceful, content. Nathaniel moved closer, stared down at his son, at the life he'd thought he was going to lose. "He ate well tonight," Lorena said quietly. "Didn't fuss. Went down easy. Good." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just present. "The council met today," Nathaniel said. Lorena stiffened. "What did they say?" "They want you controlled, managed, removed eventually." "What did you say?" "That you're under my protection." She moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could smell her, milk and herbs and something softer underneath. Grief. Still there, but fading around the edges. "Protection is just a different kind of cage," she said. "Maybe. I don't want your son to suffer because of me." Nathaniel looked at her. Really looked. At the exhaustion carved into her face. The way she held herself carefully, always ready to disappear. The strength that came from surviving loss. "You're saving him," Nathaniel said. "That's all that matters. For now." Always those words. For now. As if she was waiting for the moment everything collapsed. Maybe she was right to wait. "My Luna would have liked you," Nathaniel said. The words came without planning, without filter. Lorena's eyes widened. "You don't know that." "I do." She was kind. She noticed people others overlooked. She would have seen what you did and been grateful. "I'm not trying to replace her." "I know." Nathaniel turned back to his son. No one can replace her. The grief was still there, would always be there. His Luna had been partner, the other half of his soul. But standing here, watching his son sleep peacefully because of another woman's sacrifice, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't expected. Not attraction, not yet, but awareness. Lorena was beautiful in a way he hadn't let himself notice before. Not palace beautiful, real beautiful. The kind that came from endurance, from surviving and choosing kindness anyway. Dangerous awareness. He stepped back. "I should go. Let you rest." "Alpha King." "Nathaniel." The correction came automatically. "When we're alone, call me Nathaniel." She studied him. "That feels inappropriate. Everything about this situation is inappropriate. Might as well skip the formality." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Brief. Gone quickly. But he'd seen it. "Good night, Nathaniel." His name in her voice did something to him. Something he wasn't ready to examine. "Good night." He left before he could do something stupid. Like stay. 2 weeks after Lorena entered the palace, the challenge came. Alpha Gregor of the Southern Reach requested a formal audience. Gregor was powerful. Ambitious. He had allied with Nathaniel's father decades ago, but the alliance had always been uneasy. Built on mutual benefit rather than genuine loyalty. Nathaniel received him in the throne room. Full ceremony. Witnesses. A reminder that this was not a private conversation. Gregor entered with 5 warriors, all armed, all carrying themselves with the barely restrained aggression of wolves looking for a fight. "Alpha King," Gregor said. His bow was perfunctory, disrespectful. "Thank you for seeing me." "What do you want, Gregor?" No pleasantries, no games. Gregor smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I want to discuss the Omega." Every wolf in the room went still. Nathaniel kept his expression neutral. "Which Omega?" "The one nursing your heir. The one you brought into the palace and placed under heavy guard. The one whose presence is being discussed by every pack in the region. Her name is Lorena, and she's under my protection." "So the rumors are true." Gregor's smile widened. "An unknown Omega, no status, no bloodline. And yet she's been given access to the future king. She saved his life." "So you say." "But there are questions, Nathaniel. Questions about her origins. Her intentions. Whether this is truly about your son's welfare or something else." Nathaniel descended the steps slowly, deliberately. Be very careful how you proceed. I'm simply voicing concerns shared by many. An omega with an imprint bond to the heir represents a vulnerability, a potential threat to the bloodline, to the integrity of royal succession. The integrity of my line is not your concern. It is when it affects alliances, when it makes you appear weak. The word hung in the air like a blade. Weak. The worst accusation one alpha could level at another. Nathaniel stopped 3 feet from Gregor, met his eyes, let his dominance press forward like a physical force. Weak is letting a child die rather than accept help. Weak is placing pride above survival. I did what was necessary. If you interpret that as weakness, perhaps you don't understand what strength actually means. Gregor held his ground. Barely. Remove the omega. Compensate her if you must. But remove her before she becomes a permanent fixture. Before the imprint bond creates complications that can't be undone. The imprint bond already exists. It can't be undone. Then control her. Make it clear she has no claim, no status, no future beyond nursing. No. Gregor's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. That's my prerogative. Your prerogative affects all of us. When rival packs see you protecting a low-born omega, when they see you elevating her above court protocol. I'm not elevating her. I'm protecting my son's caretaker. There's a difference. Is there? Gregor's eyes gleamed. Or is there something else happening? Your Luna has been dead less than a month. And already you're bringing another woman into the palace, into proximity with your child. One might wonder. Nathaniel moved. One moment he was standing still. The next, his hand was around Gregor's throat, slamming the alpha back against a pillar. Guards rushed forward. Gregor's warriors drew weapons. Marcus barked an order. Stand down! Nathaniel's voice was deadly quiet. My Luna's memory is not yours to weaponize. Lorena is here because my son would die without her. If you insinuate anything else, I will personally remind you why I'm the Alpha King and you're not. Gregor couldn't speak, could barely breathe, but his eyes glittered with satisfaction. He'd gotten the reaction he wanted. Proof that Nathaniel was compromised, emotional, off balance. Nathaniel released him. Gregor stumbled back, gasping, but he was smiling. My apologies, Alpha King. I meant no disrespect to your Luna's memory. Lies. Everything about him was lies. Leave, Nathaniel ordered, and take your concerns with you. Gregor bowed. As you command. He left. His warriors followed. But the damage was done. The challenge had been issued, publicly, witnessed, and Nathaniel had responded with emotion instead of control. Word would spread. Fast. Marcus approached. That was a mistake. I know. He wanted you to react. You gave him exactly what he needed. I know. Nathaniel's hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists. Summon the council. We need to move before Gregor does. Move how? Nathaniel looked at his beta. I'm going to give Lorena official status. Something unassailable. Something that makes her untouchable. Majesty. The council will never approve. I'm not asking for approval. That evening, Nathaniel stood in his private study, staring at the ancient texts spread across his desk. Pack law, bloodline records, historical precedent. There had to be something. Some role, some position that would protect Lorena without creating the complications Gregor was already exploiting. He found it on page 47 of the Bloodline Archives. Guardian of the Heir. An ancient role. Last used 300 years ago. It existed outside the normal court hierarchy. Outside marriage, outside mating bonds. It was created specifically for situations like this. When someone outside the bloodline became essential to a young heir's survival, the guardian was immune to removal, answerable only to the Alpha King, protected by law. And most importantly, it carried no implication of romantic or political involvement. It was purely about the child. Perfect. Nathaniel called for Marcus. I need you to arrange a ceremony, tomorrow. Dawn. Full court attendance. Marcus looked at the text Nathaniel had open. Read the page. His eyes widened. You're naming her guardian. Yes, that's permanent. Once appointed, she can't be removed until the heir reaches maturity. I know. Nathaniel, this ties her to your son for at least 15 years. I know. Marcus studied him. This isn't just about protection anymore, is it? Nathaniel met his beta's eyes. My son is safe when she's near. That's all that matters. It was the truth. Just not all of it. But Marcus was wise enough not to push. I'll make the arrangements, he said quietly. Lorena was summoned at midnight. She arrived at Nathaniel's study still wearing her nightdress, wrapped in a robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Is the pup? He's fine. Sleeping. Nathaniel gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She did, her expression wary. Tomorrow morning, I'm naming you Guardian of the Air. Lorena blinked. I don't know what that means. It's an ancient role. It grants you official status, protection, authority over my son's care, and most importantly, immunity from removal. She was quiet for a long moment. Why? Because Gregor challenged me today, publicly, and he won't be the last. Keeping you safe as an unnamed Omega, under general protection, isn't sustainable. But as Guardian, you become untouchable, and trapped. Nathaniel didn't flinch. Yes. For how long? Until my son reaches maturity, 15 years minimum. The number hung between them like a weight. Lorena stood, moved to the window, stared out at the dark gardens. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. I know. I just wanted to save a child. You did, and now I'm trying to save you. She turned. Her eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. What if I say no? Then I'll find another way to protect you. But it won't be as strong. And eventually, someone like Gregor will succeed in removing you. And when that happens, my son will suffer. Truth, raw, brutal. Lorena's hands clenched in the fabric of her robe. You're giving me a choice that isn't really a choice. Yes, at least he was honest. She laughed. It was a broken sound. Guardian of the Air. It sounds important. It is. Will it make them stop hating me? No. But it will make them afraid to act on it. She nodded slowly. Exhaustion and resignation warring in her expression. Then I accept. Lorena, I accept, she repeated. Because you're right. Your son needs me. And I... She stopped, swallowed hard. I need him too. The admission cost her. Nathaniel could see it in the way her shoulders curved inward, in the grief still carved into her face. She needed the pup because nursing him gave her grief purpose, gave her body's cruel memory meaning. She needed him because he was alive, and her son wasn't. Nathaniel crossed the distance between them, stopped close enough to smell the milk and herb scent that had become familiar. Thank you, he said. She met his eyes. Don't thank me. Just keep your promise. Keep me safe. I will. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I should go. Let you work. She moved to leave. Nathaniel caught her wrist, gently, barely a touch. She froze. I won't let them hurt you, he said. I swear it. Lorena looked at his hand on her wrist, at his face, at the sincerity he couldn't quite hide. Be careful with promises, Alpha King. They have a way of becoming impossible to keep. She pulled away, and left him standing alone in his study, feeling like he'd just made a vow that would either save them all or destroy everything. The ceremony was simple but absolute. Dawnlight filtered through the throne room's high windows. The full court assembled in silence. Council members, pack representatives, servants and guards, everyone who needed to witness what was about to happen. Nathaniel stood at the throne wearing full formal regalia, crown, ceremonial cloak, the weight of authority visible and deliberate. Lorena entered escorted by Marcus. She wore a simple gown in the royal colors, provided by the palace staff. Her hair was braided, her face was composed, but Nathaniel could smell her fear underneath the careful mask. She walked to the base of the throne steps, knelt. The room held its breath. Nathaniel descended, stood before her. His voice carried through the chamber with command that allowed no argument. Lorena of the Northern Reach, you saved my son when all other options had failed. You answered instinct with courage. You gave freely what could not be bought or commanded. For this, I name you Guardian of the Air. You will hold authority over my son's care. You will be answerable only to me, and you will be protected by law and blood as long as you serve this role faithfully. He drew his ceremonial blade, pricked his palm, let blood well. Lorena raised her head, met his eyes. He pressed his bloodied palm to her forehead. The ancient mark, the binding seal. By blood and bond, you are guardian. Rise. She stood. The court murmured. Shock, disapproval, resignation. All of it, mixing into a low buzz of reaction. Aldrich stepped forward. His expression was carefully neutral, but his scent betrayed his fury. Alpha King. This is unprecedented. This is necessary, Nathaniel interrupted. And it's final. Gregor was present, standing near the back. His face was stone, but his eyes promised retribution. Let him try. Nathaniel turned to address the room. Anyone who threatens the Guardian threatens the Air. Anyone who threatens the Air threatens me. Is that clear? Silence. Then, slowly, heads bowed. Wolves who disagreed but couldn't challenge. Not here, not openly. The ceremony ended. Lorena remained standing beside the throne as the court filed out. She looked small despite her new status, overwhelmed. When the room emptied, she exhaled shakily. That's done then. Yes, they hate me now. They hated you before. Now they just can't act on it. She laughed without humor. That's supposed to comfort me? It's supposed to keep you alive. She turned to look at him. And when your son no longer needs me? When he's grown enough that the bond fades? What happens to the guardian then? Nathaniel had no answer. Because he didn't know. Weeks passed. The pup grew stronger, louder, more demanding. He was healthy in a way that still staggered Nathaniel. The transformation from dying infant to thriving child happened so quickly it felt like magic. But it wasn't magic. It was Lorena. She cared for his son with a tenderness that hurt to watch. Fed him, soothed him, sang soft songs Nathaniel didn't recognize, held him when he fussed and rocked him when he couldn't sleep. She was everything his son needed, and Nathaniel found himself watching more than was appropriate. At first, he told himself it was about checking on the pup, making sure his son continued to thrive. A father's responsibility, but that was a lie. He watched Lorena, the way she moved through the suite with quiet efficiency, the way she smiled when the pup grabbed her finger, the way exhaustion carved lines into her face that sleep slowly erased. She was beautiful. He'd noticed before, but now, with proximity and time, he couldn't stop noticing. The curve of her neck, the strength in her hands, the softness in her voice when she spoke to his son. Desire was a slow burn, building beneath grief and guilt, making him restless. He started visiting the suite more often, stayed longer, made excuses. Lorena noticed. You don't have to check on us every day, she said one evening. The pup was asleep. She was folding clean cloths near the window. I'm his father. I want to see him. You're avoiding something. Too perceptive. Nathaniel moved to the bassinet. His son slept peacefully, tiny hand curled near his face. The court is still restless, he said. Gregor has been sending letters to allied pacts, spreading doubt. About me. About my judgment. Same thing. True. Lorena set down the cloths. I can leave. Find a way to break the bond. There are healers who specialize in... No. The word came out sharper than intended. She flinched. Nathaniel forced himself to breathe, to moderate his tone. Breaking the bond would hurt him. I won't risk it. Even if keeping me here destabilizes your rule, my rule is my concern. She studied him. You're protecting me beyond what's necessary. Why? Because you saved my son. Because you're kind. Because when I watch you with him, I feel something I thought died with my Luna. He couldn't say any of that. Your guardian, he said instead. That makes you my responsibility. Responsibility. She repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Is that all? The question hung between them. Dangerous. Loaded. Nathaniel should leave. Should maintain distance. Should remember that his Luna had been dead less than 2 months, and grief was supposed to matter more than desire. But Lorena was standing there in soft evening light, looking at him with eyes that understood loss, and he was so tired of pretending he didn't notice her. No, he said quietly. That's not all. Her breath caught. Nathaniel, I know this is complicated. I know you're here because of my son. I know anything beyond that is inappropriate. He stopped, made himself continue. But I need you to understand something. I'm not pursuing you. I'm not pressuring you. But I also can't pretend I don't see you. Silence. Lorena's hands twisted together. Your Luna would want me to live. Eventually. She wouldn't want me frozen in grief. He paused. But this isn't about moving on. It's about acknowledging what's there. And what's there? Attraction, respect, gratitude. All tangled together into something I don't have a name for. She looked away. This is dangerous. I know. The court will use it against us. I know. Your son should be the only thing that matters. He is. Nathaniel moved closer. Stopped just outside her space. But you matter too. Lorena's eyes shimmered. I can't be what you need. Can't fill that space. I'm not her. I'm not asking you to be. Then what are you asking? Nothing. He stepped back. I'm just being honest. No expectations. No demands. Just truth. She nodded slowly. I appreciate the honesty. But I need to focus on your son. On being the guardian. Anything else feels like a betrayal. Of him. Of my own son's memory. She was right. Of course she was right. I understand, Nathaniel said. He left before he could say anything else. Before he could cross the line he'd just drawn. But as he walked back to his empty chambers, he couldn't shake the feeling that the line was already crossed, and restraint was becoming impossible to maintain. The attack came 3 months after Lorena became guardian. Not physical. Political. Gregor gathered enough allied pacts to call for a formal challenge. Not to Nathaniel's rule directly, that would be suicide. but to the Guardian's appointment. They demanded a tribunal. A review of whether the ancient role had been appropriately invoked. The implication was clear. Remove Lorena, or face unified opposition. Nathaniel refused. The standoff escalated. Border tensions increased. Trade agreements stalled. Rumors spread that Gregor was preparing for something bigger. Marcus advised caution. If you lose Allied support, we're vulnerable. Gregor has been building this for months. He has backing. Then we fight. Nathaniel, think about your son. I am thinking about him. Remove Lorena, and he suffers. I won't do that. Even if it means war? The question sat heavy between them. Nathaniel had no answer that didn't sound insane. He was willing to risk war for an Omega, for his son's guardian, for a woman who had become essential in ways that went beyond biology. That night, he found Lorena in the gardens. She stood near the fountain, wrapped in a cloak against the cold. His son was with a trusted servant, asleep and safe. She turned when she heard him approach. I heard about the tribunal, she said. I heard Gregor is threatening war. He's bluffing. Is he? Nathaniel didn't answer. Lorena laughed bitterly. You should let me go. Compensate me. Send me somewhere safe. End this before it destroys everything. No. Nathaniel, I said no. Why? She turned to face him fully. Why are you willing to risk everything for me? For a low-born Omega who wandered into your path by accident. Because it wasn't an accident. The words came from somewhere deep. Somewhere he hadn't let himself examine. Because you saved my son when everyone else failed. Because you're kind and strong, and you see him as a child instead of a political piece. Because... He stopped. Because I'm falling for you. The truth hit like a physical blow. Somewhere between gratitude and proximity and watching her care for his son, Nathaniel had crossed from respect into something deeper. He loved her. Not the all-consuming bond he'd shared with his Luna. That was irreplaceable. This was different. Quieter. Built on shared grief and earned trust and the slow recognition that she made him want to be better. Because what? Lorena prompted. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Nathaniel closed the distance between them. Stopped close enough to touch but didn't. Because I care about you. Not just as guardian. As yourself. Her eyes widened. Nathaniel, we can't. I know. But I need you to know anyway. Before this gets worse. Before Gregor forces a choice. I need you to know that you're not just my son's caretaker. You're... Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't say it. Please. Why? Because if you say it, then I have to admit I feel it too. And I can't. Not when your Luna's memory is still so close. Not when the court would use it to destroy us both. Not when it could hurt your son. Lorena, I think about you, she interrupted. Her voice was rough with tears. More than I should. When I hold your son, I see you. When you visit, I notice everything. How you move. How you speak. How you look at me like I'm more than just useful. She wiped her eyes angrily. But it's too complicated. Too dangerous. And I won't be the reason your rule crumbles. Nathaniel caught her hand. Gently. What if I told you I don't care? What if the rule, the court, all of it, mattered less than this? Then you'd be lying. Because you're the Alpha King. Your rule is everything. Not everything. She pulled her hand away. It has to be. For your son. For your pack. You can't choose me over that. What if I already have? The confession hung in the cold night air. Lorena stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying that when Gregor demands you leave, I'll refuse. When Allied packs threaten to withdraw support, I'll let them. When every advisor tells me I'm making a mistake, I'll ignore them. Because you and my son matter more. Nathaniel. I love you, he said. Simple. Direct. I didn't mean to. Didn't plan it. But it's there. And I needed you to know. Tears spilled down her cheeks. This is insane. I know. You barely know me. I know enough. Your Luna would want me to be happy. Eventually. And you make me happy. Seeing you with my son. Talking with you. Just knowing you're here. She was shaking. This will end badly. Maybe. Or maybe it won't. He stepped closer. Gave her time to move away. She didn't. I'm not asking for an answer, Nathaniel said. I'm just asking you to consider that this might be worth the risk. That we might be worth the risk. Lorena looked up at him. Her face was wet with tears. Her eyes were full of fear and hope tangled together. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. Of what? Of losing you. Of losing my son. Of making the wrong choice and destroying everything. She laughed. It was a broken sound. Then we're both terrified. Does that mean... I don't know. She stepped back. I need time. Need to think. This is too much. Take all the time you need. She nodded, started to walk away, then stopped, turned back, and kissed him. Brief, soft, tasting of tears and hope and desperation. She pulled away before he could react. That's not an answer, she said. That's just honesty. Because you deserve to know I feel it too. Then she was gone. Nathaniel stood alone in the garden, heart racing, mind spinning. She felt it too. That changed everything, and nothing. Because Gregor was still threatening. The court was still fractured. His son still needed her. But now, underneath all of that, there was this. Something growing despite every logical reason it shouldn't. Love choosing to exist anyway. The tribunal was set for a week later. Nathaniel spent the time preparing, gathering evidence, documenting his son's health, building the legal case for why the guardian role was valid and necessary. But he also spent time with Lorena, carefully, appropriately. They talked while his son slept, shared stories about their losses, their fears, their hopes for a future that seemed impossible but maybe wasn't. She told him about her son, about the 6 weeks of watching him struggle, about the grief that never quite faded. He told her about his Luna, about the bond they'd shared, about the guilt that came with wanting someone new. It's not betrayal, Lorena said quietly. Love doesn't have a limit. Your Luna's memory doesn't erase because you care about someone else, doesn't it? No, it just makes room. That's what love does. It grows. It doesn't replace. The word settled something inside him. Permission to feel this without drowning in guilt. Permission to want her without betraying memory. The night before the tribunal, Lorena came to his study. She wore a simple dress. Her hair was down. She looked nervous and determined in equal measure. I've decided, she said. Nathaniel stood. Decided what? To fight. For your son. For myself. For this. She gestured between them. If the tribunal tries to remove me, I'll argue. I'll make them see that your son needs me. That I'm not just convenient. I'm necessary. Lorena. But more than that. She stepped closer. If we survive this, if we get through the tribunal and Gregor's threats and everything else, I want to try. With you. His heart stopped. Try what? This. Us. Carefully. Slowly. But actually try. Are you sure? No. She laughed shakily. But I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of letting loss define everything. Your son gave me purpose. You're giving me hope. And maybe that's enough. Nathaniel crossed to her, cupped her face gently. You're remarkable. I'm terrified. That makes 2 of us. He kissed her. Properly this time. No hesitation. No fear. Just choice. She kissed him back with desperate intensity, like she was claiming something she'd been denying herself. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said, I need you to know I chose this. Chose you. Freely. I know. Promise me something. Anything. If the tribunal goes badly. If they demand my removal and you can't stop them. Don't sacrifice your rule to save me. Your son needs a strong king more than he needs me. That's not. Promise, Nathaniel. He wanted to argue. Wanted to swear he'd fight for her no matter what. But she was right. His son needed stability. Needed a father who could lead. I promise, he said. But I'm going to do everything possible to make sure it doesn't come to that. I know. She kissed him again. Softer. Sweeter. Then she left. And Nathaniel stood in his study feeling like tomorrow would either be the beginning of something beautiful or the end of everything he'd started to hope for. The tribunal lasted 6 hours. Gregor presented his case. Argued that the guardian role had been inappropriately invoked, that Lorena's status undermined traditional bloodline protections, that keeping her close created vulnerabilities no amount of legal precedent could justify. Nathaniel countered with evidence. Medical records showing his son's health crisis, historical texts proving the guardian role's legitimacy, testimony from healers confirming the imprint bond's permanence. The council deliberated. Lorena stood beside Nathaniel throughout, silent, strong, refusing to be cowed. When Aldrich finally spoke, his voice was heavy with resignation. The guardian role has been appropriately invoked. The Alpha King acted within his authority. The appointment stands. Gregor's face darkened with fury. This is a mistake. The law disagrees, Nathaniel said calmly. The tribunal ended. Gregor left with promises of future challenges. But he'd lost. Publicly. Definitively. The threat wasn't over. But it had been pushed back. For now. That was enough. Months passed. The pup grew. Healthy. Happy. Loud. He laughed more. Cried less. Thrived in ways that still staggered Nathaniel every time he saw his son reach for Lorena with complete trust. The court adapted. Slowly, grudgingly, but they adapted. Lorena was guardian. That was reality. Fighting it accomplished nothing. And between Nathaniel and Lorena, something beautiful grew, carefully, slowly, built on shared grief and earned trust and the recognition that love didn't have to be immediate to be real. They took walks in the gardens, talked late into the night, learned each other's rhythms. He courted her properly, brought her flowers, made time despite responsibilities, showed her through action that she wasn't just guardian, she was partner. Eventually, she moved from the blue suite into chambers that connected directly to his, not sharing space. Not yet, but closer. And when his son cried in the night, they both responded, together, a family forming from pieces that had been broken. A year after Lorena saved his son, Nathaniel proposed, not with grand ceremony, not with political calculation, just the two of them in the gardens at dawn, his son sleeping peacefully nearby. "I want you to be my mate," he said, "not because you're guardian, not because my son needs you, but because I love you, because you make me better, because I want to spend my life with you." Lorena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm still scared. I know. I still miss my son, still grieve. I know. And I'll never replace your Luna. I don't want you to replace her. I want you to be yourself. That's enough." She smiled through tears. "Then yes, I'll be your mate." He kissed her, soft, sweet, full of promise. Behind them, his son stirred, made a small sound. Lorena pulled away, laughed. "He has perfect timing, always." They went to the pup together. Nathaniel lifted his son. Lorena brushed her fingers through the child's soft hair. Their son, not by blood, by choice, by love. By the bond that had formed when instinct answered instinct and changed everything. Nathaniel looked at Lorena. At his son. At the family they'd built from survival and loss and desperate hope. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For crying that day. For stopping when you should have run. For being brave enough to save him. Save us." Lorena leaned against his shoulder. "Thank you for keeping your promise. For protecting me. For seeing me as more than useful." They stood together in the early light, watching the sun rise over the palace gardens. A family forged from grief. A love built on choice. And a future that had seemed impossible but wasn't. Because sometimes, the strongest bonds form not in ceremony or planning, but in moments of desperate need when instinct moves faster than fear. And sometimes, love grows slowly, quietly, in the spaces between surviving and living. This was that love, and it was enough. If you believe love is forged through grief, if you understand that strength sometimes means accepting help, and if you know that the quiet ones can change everything, then you've found your story. Where power bows to compassion, where instinct defies law, and where a crying child brings two broken people back to life. This is where hope grows from pain, where family is chosen as much as it is born, and where an alpha king learns that true strength means protecting the ones who save you. Welcome to a world where the unthinkable becomes everything.